Hey guys, welcome to another deck profile with mediocre production value on my phone. Today we're going to be looking at the Burning Abyss deck that I took to the Salem Regional, which was the last day of previous format, so it's a little irrelevant now, which is why the main topic of this video, although we are talking about this deck, is kind of speculation for Burning Abyss deck profiles going forward, just closing thoughts on the previous format. I'll probably make some quips about the new ban list. And there's some pretty interesting, I don't know how interesting it is, but I did a couple things to experiment in this deck profile. This list that I brought to the Salem Regional, because it is the last day of the format, so it sort of doesn't matter, I took that as an opportunity to try a few different things that I hadn't really tried before. So we'll get into that. First we'll start with the count of actual Burning Abyss monsters. We are playing Hydralander, so we're only playing 2 Skarm, 2 Farfa, and then I decided to play 2 Alec. I've been playing one of him for a while now. The reason for 2 is that I expected a fair number of Sky Striker players, and Alec is very good against them, because you can send it off of Beatrice to protect from Widow Anchor. It was overall okay. I actually didn't play any Sky Strikers, which is really surprising, because there were quite a few there, and that's what I built this entire deck for, pretty much. So that was fairly unfortunate. For the one-ofs, we have, of course, Graf. Have to play Graf. Seer. One of Libic. I've been playing 2 Libic. The second one came out for the second Alec. I will say there were a couple games where I missed the second copy of this, but not too badly. I don't think there was ever a situation where, like, it was completely game-changing because I didn't have the second one. It was just, like, once or twice. It was like, it'd be kind of nice to have. 1 Barbar, 1 Calcab. Calcab is pretty good in a lot of matchups, just gets rid of, you know, that one lone back row you're afraid of, or ideally it would have banished some Sky Striker back row set off of multi-roll, but didn't get to play any, so that sucked. For some other level 3 stuff, we have the 3 Fiendish Rhino Warrior. This is pretty much every Burning Abyss monster in your deck in the form of a single card. Of course, the 1 Tour Guide. It's by far the best thing to search off of Skarm. It can be a pretty major tempo swing if you resolve it. 2 Tsuchinoko and 2 Jackalope. I'd say in this bricky mess that was a deck, these were a shining light. They fixed some hands, or at the very least were able to help me make Dante with a hand trap. Yes, I made Dante with hand traps many times this regional. This deck is just as much a lesson in what not to do as it is a lesson in what to do. Because, man, this... I think I might have gotten slightly unlucky. But overall, this build, I think, was not that great. I was playing some cards I haven't really tested at all, but we'll get into that. 3 Malicious, 1 Sulcius. Rest in peace, 3rd Malicious for next format. I don't know if we're going to be playing this card in Burning Abyss anymore now that it's semi-limited. I haven't tested it at 2 at all, but I kind of feel like it might not be worth it. As much as I've loved Malicious in the past, the last few weeks, and especially this regional, it's been really starting to bother me, just in how cloggy it is. There were so many hands where I opened like 2 Malicious, or I had a Orbital Hydralander in hand, and I just had like 2 Malicious that were stuck in my graveyard or something dumb. It was just horrible. This card was very detrimental during this regional, despite the fact that I think in general it's been a pretty good card for me, and I think it's a very strong card, and it is something that Burning Abyss will miss moving forward, but it is a little overblown. A lot of people are saying that now that Malicious is semi-limited, Burning Abyss is dead, or it's not going to be very good next format, which I do not think is true. I do think there are things that we can play instead. Even just putting, like, Gallus back in. Something you'll notice is that I'm not playing Gallus. For the longest time, I was playing 2 Tsuchinoko, 2 Jackalope, and 2 Gallus. To fit everything that I wanted to in here, I had to take Gallus out. but you know, with those lists you can put those back in. You can play Speedroids again. I think some cards that potentially we could run moving forward are, I'm just gonna like grab them real quick. Some cards we could try running in the future are Black Dragon Collar Serpent and White Dragon Wyverburster. They aren't level 6, which is unfortunate, and they don't do anything in the graveyard like Malicious does. But they do... They are a +2, essentially, because you can banish a dark with Wyverburster or a light with Collar Serpent to summon them, and then when they're sent to the graveyard, or linked away, you can add the other one to your hand. So you can only use each effect once per turn, so you can like summon one, link it away, add the other one, banish the first one you used, summon it, link that away, and then add another one. You can't summon like this, like, you know, say if I started with Wyverburster, grabbed Collar Serpent effect, I can't like, that's with a second Wyverburster, I can't summon it that same turn, but it does maintain advantage, so it is technically a +2, and it got 2 monsters on the field like Malicious would. I don't know how good that's going to be, maybe not at all, but it is something to think about and that I'm going to be testing. Sulcius, probably still going to run it even if we don't run Malicious. It was alright. It does what it needs to do. It's just another link material that gets important cards out of your hand. It has 2200 attack. It got me over the top for an OTK a couple times, I think. It's just pretty solid. Of course, the one of Fairy Tale Snow, which is one of the better cards in the deck. I wouldn't say it's the best card in the deck, but it's probably like top 3. Let's go with these cards. So we're Legionnaire, Dark Armed, and I know this isn't an actual card, but I was borrowing it for the event. This is an Eclipse Wyvern. So these two are both. So if you don't know what Eclipse Wyvern does, when it goes to the graveyard, I can banish one of these 2 cards from my deck, and when this is banished, I can add whichever one I banished to my hand. So I wanted to test out these cards. A lot of people really like Dark Armed. I've personally been fairly intrigued with Legionnaire, and some I know like the Kali Effect had a deck profile where he was playing Eclipse Wyvern to add one of these cards. I just wanted to try it. I don't think Eclipse Wyvern is very good. It felt very cloggy. You don't really ever like to see it in your hand. Even when you send it to the graveyard and banish one of these to search it, it's pretty dependent on you having snow in the graveyard, which you can't always, so it just feels like it's just adding another brick card that just doesn't really do anything. Dark Armed was okay. I found this to be either amazing or terrible, because either you summon it and you destroy 3 cards, or it's just stuck in your hand. Again, snow is very important for getting it on the field, because you have to have exactly 3 dark attribute monsters. So later in the game, it's quite a bit worse. It's a lot harder to summon. And even if you summon it, usually the darks that are in your grave are things that you actually don't want to banish, like Seer and Graph. So I'm pretty iffy on the card. Legionnaire, I would say, is probably quite a bit better, maybe. It's tough to say, because it's not quite as game-changing as Dark Armed Dragon, but it is much easier to summon. Is it better than Blackluster Soldier and Void of the Beginning? I'm not quite ready to say one way or the other. The one thing about Legionnaire is that it does destroy 2 cards, which means that it can get spell and traps, which is something that Burning Abyss really struggles against, whereas Blackluster Soldier is pretty strictly monster removal. I will say that its banish effect is really great in some matchups, like Thunder Dragons. Being able to attack twice ends a lot of games. I've really liked Blackluster Soldier, so I might try putting it back in. Definitely would not play the Eclipse Wyvern again, at least in a list that looks anything like this one currently does. 2 Hydrolander. This is blasphemous, I know. Like, everyone plays 3. I've been playing 3. I've been a proponent of 3 Hydrolander for the last couple months. I think 3 Hydrolander is correct. I didn't see this card nearly enough. There were a couple unfortunate situations where it got stuck in my hand, where it's like really the only play I had, because I like just didn't really have like another 2 level 3s, or there's no big link play I could make, so this was the only play in my hand. But then I had like 2 Ghost Reaper in my graveyard. Spoiler alert for the side deck. So that was really unfortunate. But it is, in general, pretty easy to summon, and I think it's one of the most impactful cards. It's a 3k body that can, quick effect, destroy a card, mills 3. Even if you just resolve that effect once, it's pretty big. Just getting to mill more cards, destroy something. If you resolve this card twice, then you're almost guaranteed to win. So you should be playing 3. I had to cut the 3rd to try to squeeze in, like the Eclipse Wyvern and the Dark Armed and the Levianeer on top of all the other stuff I wanted to play. So don't play 2. Definitely play 3. For hand traps, we have 2 Ash into Ogre. As I've mentioned earlier, I made a lot of Dantes with these cards because this deck was super bricky. Almost every single hand I opened up, out of the 5, like 3 of the cards were playable max, it felt like. So level 3 is great for those occasions where you just have to like normal one of these and then use the Tsuchinoko and Jackalope to make your first Dante. Does come up even in more consistent builds every once in a while. This can be Ghost, Bell, and Haunted Mansion, but I did want to try Ghost Ogre because this is a hand trap that a lot of people have sort of been iffy on. What this is really good against is hitting Summon Sorceress, but otherwise in a lot of matchups, and especially against decks like Goki that can chain block, it's not that amazing. I would say it was adequate. Might try Ghost Bell, but I thought Ghost Ogre was fun. And of course Ash is Ash Blossom. It's just good in every matchup. We played 4 Kaijus. Again, I was expecting to play quite a bit of Sky Striker. Didn't end up seeing it at all, unfortunately. Just a lot of like trap decks and like combo decks. Against which these are not very good. If you're not planning to play against a bunch of Sky Striker, I would not recommend playing these. I would say, though, that some of the matchups I had, some of like the rogue matchups I was against, these were still decent. I think they overperformed considering what matchups I had. But next format, I think Sky Striker is going to be absolutely amazing because they didn't hit Sky Striker at all for some reason on the ban list, which I think is really stupid. I think at least like Widow Anchor should have gone to 1 or something, maybe hit multi-roll. But these I think are going to have to stay in just because Sky Striker is going to become the by far, maybe not by far, but most certainly the strongest deck. And of course, finally we have our 3 Sekka's Light. Thank God we're getting these printed in super rare in the OTS pack. I hope they're not too expensive, but really like to have those. Going into the extra deck, my favorite card in this deck, and maybe one of my favorite cards in the whole game, Beatrice, of course. This is one of the main reasons we play this deck. And accompanying her, 2 Dante, you never need the 3rd, really. I still play DDD, Stone King Darius. This can be a Borreload Dragon instead. I find this fairly reliable to make when you're going second, and there's just something that you really can't get rid of. This only requires 2 level 3s as opposed to Borreload Dragon requiring 4 things, 4 effect monsters, so this is a little easier to make. My personal preference, you can play Borreload if you want. I'm playing Break Sword. The main reason to run this is because 2 like Burning Abyss monsters can make it under Gozen match. This is a pretty reliable out to that card, and yeah, that's pretty much the main reason why. If you already used your Nightmare Phoenix, then sometimes you can go into that instead, just as kind of like a utility thing. Of course, 1 Boral Sword. This is maybe the best monster in the extra deck, excluding Dante and Beatrice. So many OTKs. This card's amazing in Burning Abyss. It just should be Boral Sword Dragon with the Burning Abyss. Reaper target, Firewall Dragon. Thank God this is gone so that we can Reaper something else. I will say on the ban list, though, I'll talk about this more in a different video, but I think Firewall Dragon ended up taking all the heat. I think Konami heard everyone complaining about it and then sort of just hit it and not enough of other things. So, like, Gumblar should have been banned. So we're still going to have to deal with decks that used to play Firewall. They're just different now. But we can switch this out for, like, Easold, Summon Sorceress, Gumblar, whatever we want. That can be something else next format. One Trisbania, amazing card against trap decks. If you're playing Burning Abyss competitively, you should be playing this card. Triple Burst, I've debated taking it out a lot, and I almost didn't put it in here, but again, I decided to gear this deck towards playing against Sky Striker. This card's getting a Sky Striker, because if you beat over their Link monster with this card, then they can't Chain Ray and summon it back. 4 Nightmares, Mermaid, Phoenix, Cerberus, Unicorn. A lot of people play 2 Phoenix. The second Phoenix could have been Triple Burst, or the Phantom Knights of Break Sword. I just opted to play 1 and play those cards instead. You can play the second Phoenix if you want. That might even be a little bit better. Underclock is Underclock. I really need to get the holo version of this. And finally, we have our Fusion Dante. Beatrice did get destroyed a couple times this regional, and in general, I think you should play this card. Some people are trying to get away with not playing this card because they don't think people will destroy Beatrice. If every Burning Abyss player just stops playing this card, then people are going to start destroying Beatrice more. And some of the rogue players just sort of had to destroy Beatrice because they had no other way of dealing with her, and they just sort of had to deal with this separately. Yeah, I mean, this card just wins a lot of games because once they get over Beatrice, they really just don't have anything for Pilgrim. For the side deck, we have 3rd Ash, 2 Droll, 3 Reaper. I'd say this is pretty good. For some reason, I just never pick up the 3rd Droll. So you can play the 3rd Droll here if you want, although I actually did like the 3rd Ash quite a bit. I think Ash Blossom is just so good in every matchup, and it was especially good this regional because just ashing an Armageddon Knight was so huge every time you could do it. Ghost Reaper was pretty good, just taking out Firewall Dragon. There was the one game that I mentioned earlier with Hydralander where I ended up with 2 of these in my graveyard and no way to get rid of them. And so they were kind of a double-edged sword because they got rid of the Firewall, but then they also prevented me from summoning Hydralander and kind of lost to me that game. I would definitely run these, though. I think these are sticking next format. Just the target's going to change. It's not going to be Firewall Dragon anymore. 3 Pankratops. Generic going second card. I didn't sight it in that much, to be honest, and even when I did, I only saw it a couple times. It's okay. I'll probably continue playing at least 2 of it in the side. I will say I did miss Majesty's Fiend, which is one of the things that came out for this. Majesty's Fiend is a going first card, but then I kind of wanted to try some more going second stuff that's a little more generic than Ghost Reaper and Droll, which aren't good in a lot of matchups. This is good in a lot of trap matchups. It's decent against Sky Striker. Meh. I was whelmed. 1 card Destruction. If we're setting out Sekka's Light, I think it's good to have this card because it helps you find side deck cards, and it's just a really powerful card in general. And accompanying it, we have 3 Twin Twisters, of course, just for trap decks and stuff. And then here's one of the things I experimented on. Another one of the things, Cosmic Cyclone. I played 2 of them. I was playing 3 Red Reboot, and then those came out for these 3. Cosmic Cyclone, I decided to try because I just really haven't played it at all this format, and I wanted to see kind of just how it performed. Obviously, it's not quite as good against trap decks like Altergeist because it doesn't just turn them all their traps off. But one of the things you can do with this is actually set it in against Sky Striker. It actually hits their stuff. A lot of their stuff does stuff when it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, so you can just banish it. I was also curious to see if chaining this to engage would do anything, because, you know, the activate engage, you chain Cosmic Cyclone targeting it, it still resolves, but then it gets banished. So they can't add it back off of Kagari, and it doesn't add to the number of spells that are in their graveyard or anything. Like, it's just like it's gone now as far as they're concerned. So I wanted to try that, didn't get to, unfortunately. And that's the deck. So a couple weird card choices that I would not have, you know, played if I was taking this regional a little more seriously. I have another regional coming up in a couple weeks, which I'll probably play Burning Abyss at. I might play Altergeist or Paleozoic, but probably Burning Abyss. And I'm going to come up with a little bit more of a serious build that I've actually tested and am more confident in. Interesting stuff going into next format. We'll just kind of have to see where testing takes us. So until then, I hope you guys enjoy playing Burning Abyss in the new format, and I will see you guys in future videos.